the left in order for it to clear, or if it needs to move to the right. If it needs to move to the left, all you're going to do is come in here and screw this in. Your blade's going to stay stationary, the guard's going to move to the left. If it looks like it's hanging up and it needs to go to the right, then the reverse is true. You're going to screw this out, the blade stays stationary, the guard moves to the right. So this is a very simple thing, and when it does hang up, if you don't fix it correctly, what you're going to end up doing is taking this and tweaking this in order to get your wood through. Your hands are up close to the blade. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble with that, so you want to make sure to approach this on a safety first level. Now the next thing we're going to do, which is really one of the last things here of the body itself here, is we're going to come on down and we've got to get our adjustment set up for the lathe. Now let me tell you folks, if you haven't done some turning, you're missing an awful lot of what Shopsmith is about. In my 40-something years, I consider turning to be the most therapeutic thing I do. I can go out into the shop and in a course of 4 hours I can turn about 4 or 5 bowls, a bunch of spindles, and I could have a lot of angst about me when I go in there, and when I come out, it's all gone. So it's a great therapy. You get something out of it rather than just paying a psychoanalyst $50, $75 an hour. Okay, so what we want to do here to line up for our lathe, for our spindles, is we want to make sure that we're lined up from center here over to center on this side with our tailstock. So we're going to go ahead and take this and slide it down. We're going to come down as far as we can. Now we're going to look at the 2 things that come with your machine when you first get them. One of the things here is going to be what's called a 4-spur lathe drive. That is something that you will continue to use throughout your spindle turning. The next thing you get here is called a dead cup center. Now it is dead because it does not rotate. And in that lies the problem. There's no rotation here, this is rotating. This is going to get extraordinarily hot down here. You're going to start getting smoking from it. Any of you that have turned with a dead cup center know exactly what I'm talking about. The suggestion from any company would be to put wax on that end. In my impression, what you get from that is now you get smoke that smells like wax. So what I would do here, what I'd suggest to you here, is that when you start getting serious about it, and this is fine for practicing, and that's all that this is intended for. We realize when this comes out with the machine that this is not going to be something that you're going to use down the road. But like I said, we do not know if you're ever going to turn anything. So I would suggest that once you start getting to a point that you want to keep or give away what you're doing, that you move into a live center here. Now this is a live center. We're going to go ahead and put this into a new number 2 taper here. And we're going to take a mallet and we're going to drive that in. Get that good and solid driven in there. Now, my eyes are not good enough because we have this lift assist on here. It doesn't allow my carriage to come down far enough for me to really quill out and be able to go tip to tip. I cannot draw that line there. So what I want to do here is just put that away and come in with my chuck with a brad point bit on it. It makes no difference. This happens to be a 3/8 inch. That doesn't make any difference really what size that is at all. And we'll lock that down. Now I want to make sure that my headstock is locked. Once again, like I said before, it'll pull if you don't. Now we're going to go ahead and take that all the way out so that we're basically tip to tip here. Okay, and lock that down. Now we have 2 adjustments to do here on the tailstock. One is a horizontal adjustment and one is a vertical. So the first one we're going to do is horizontal. So for the 500 owners, you probably have 1 set screw here. For the rest of us, we're going to have 2. So we're going to come in and loosen these set screws. Once we get those loosened, this eccentrically moves back and forth. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, I'm going to look straight down on this, get that lined up, and start bringing these hexes in. Now, it's kind of, think in terms of lug nuts on a car. You want to kind of rotate back and forth. It's going to pull a little bit. As I'm tightening this down, I'm going to watch the direction it's pulling, and I'm going to keep that centered. Now, generally, I do 3 times. The 3rd time is where I really cinch them. Now I've got it nice and tight in here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is going to be the vertical adjustment. So what I've got to do here is I've got to loosen my tightening bar. I'm going to come down here, and on the bottom of this leg right here, I have what's called a collar assembly stop. Now these are really great for putting on the legs of your table, the legs of your extension table, and when you get everything adjusted to the height of the cut with your main table, you adjust your extension tables and everything to that. You lock these down on each leg. Now when I come in and throw this together, I drop all of my tables in. They go exactly the same height. Well, the same principle is true here. Okay, now we're going to come down for the horizontal, and we're going to adjust this stop collar. We're going to loosen it up first. We're going to come into our tie bar here and loosen this. Okay, we're going to bring this exactly point to point. Once we get that point to point, we're going to lock our bar down here. Then we're going to come around here to the stop collar. We're going to blow underneath it to make sure that there's no debris that's going to give us a false setting the next time we drop this in. And we're going to seat that and push down on it and lock it. Now what this enables me to do here is now when I get through with this, I can take this out, I can hang this on the wall. When I get ready to turn, I can bring this in, drop this straight in there, I tighten it down, and I'm ready to turn again. Okay, now as far as the lathe goes, that's all that you're going to have to do adjustment for, folks. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the table off, and we're going to start working a little bit. I want to talk to you about putting wax on your weigh tubes and how important that is. We want to make sure that our weigh tubes down here, which are a very major component of this. I mean, obviously our headstock travels it, our carriage travels it, everything travels on this. So we want to make sure not to get this pitted, not to have a rust in it or anything. And the way around that is to keep a good coat of wax on that. So let's take the table off here. Now I would suggest for your new owners that you put at least 7 to 9 coats of wax on here. So all you're going to do, the first thing I'm going to do here is just move this all the way to the outside parameters here. Come back in with the same wax we talked about a little bit earlier with the Johnson's Original Formula Paste Wax. And we're going to wax this up real good. So we're just going to come in and put a good coat of wax on this. Then all I'll do is just move this down a little bit. Come in on the back side, put a little bit of wax. Move the headstock towards the center. Come back here and put some wax on it. And then after allowing it to dry, once again, I'm not going to spend the time to allow it to dry, but you're going to come back in and just get all this cleaned off here. So we just wipe this on down. Get as much off of there as possible. And if you want to take a little extra time, you could actually come in and give them a little buff up here. Now, if you've got a power buffer of any kind that's going to hook up to a drill, a hand drill or anything, you can obviously come in and buff them up a little bit. And that's all you're going to need to do. And now we have a nice even flow on our headstock here. Everything's going to move back and forth very, very simply. If you ever go in and see any of the demonstrations, you'll see that these people, almost like Tom Cruise did in one of his movies, how he worked a bar. You come in almost and tap one of these things and it'll go all the way to the other end. Now those guys probably have a couple of 100 different coats of wax on there, so it may never quite get that easy for you. Now the next thing we're going to do here, we're kind of doing some general maintenance of the body here of the machine. We're going to come on down here with our tightening bar. Now one of the things you want to realize is when you're putting a special purpose tool in down here, which could be anything from the bandsaw, the joiner, the scroll saw, any of these things, you want to make sure that both of the tightening areas on both sides go out simultaneously. If you don't, what you're going to find is when you put a piece in here, when you put one of your special purpose tools in here, one side is grabbed really well and the other side flexes. So what I'd suggest to you is to go ahead and back this all the way out. Okay, now what's happening here is these pins on the end of the bar may be out of alignment, which means that one of them could be out quite a ways further than the other, And as you're screwing this together, obviously this one is going to move out at a much faster rate. This one is not. This one is going to make contact, hold the leg in very well. This one is not. And that's when you get that play in the special purpose tool. So what you want to do here is just screw these all the way in. Come over to the other side here and do basically the same thing on this. Once those are screwed all the way in, we're going to bring this on in here and feed this back into the slots for it. We're going to make sure that both of these sides are in the slots, and then we're going to start just moving this forward. Okay, now what that's doing is it's bringing both of these out at the same rate. So when I finally lock down on the legs to my special purpose tool, it's going to lock down both sides equally. All right, that's a wrap, folks, and I'd like to leave you with 3 principles. The first is planning. Planning is something that can help you circumvent any problems that you might encounter in the future. Whether you have a standalone tool or whether you have a Shopsmith, you always need to make sure that your cutout lists, the order that you're cutting things, and all of those are planned out ahead of time. Do drawings. Make sure that you have drawings that's going to show you any problems you may have. Practice is the second. Make sure that you practice good habits that are safe. The third is patience. Patience is something that's not easily taught, but woodworking can teach you patience if you want your project to come out with the quality that it should with the fine product that you're using here. Join me for the next Shopsmith Journals, and until then, be safe.